This video is really fucking long. There's a lot of spoilers. I'll talk about them because they're all quite exciting. That means the editing is going to be minimal to make sure this isn't going to take like 10 hours to make one video. Anyway, enjoy. So I had a little bit of time off where I was a bit sick and also my birthday, and I came back to 96 cards being spoiled for Final Fantasy. I'm not going to cover all 96 of them in this video, but I'm going to cover a good portion of them. So let's just crack on with it. If you did not know, Final Fantasy is coming to Magic the Gathering. Final Fantasy is the world's most famous JRPG. That is an RPG, a role-playing game based around jugs. If you look to buy your Magic the Gathering cards, whether it be Final Fantasy or otherwise, in the North American continent, you can do so from CoolStuffInc.com. Use the code Kenobi at checkout to get 5% off your order, and it helps support the show. And if you're buying in Europe, you can use the code on screen right now from magicmadhouse.co.uk to get 5% off all non-sale and non-pre-order items. Let's start out with a biggie. It's Summon a Bahamut, a 9-mana saga that says destroy up to one target non-land permanent. For the first 2 pips, draw 2 cards, and eventually Mega Flare. This creature deals damage equal to the total mana value of other permanents you control to each opponent, and it's a 9/9 flyer. They are never beating the Commander set allegations with 9-mana splashy things like this, are they? To explain this saga creatures really quickly, basically it's a creature that is only around for a set number of turns. In this case, it's around for 4 turns, although it dies on the 4th turn when you Mega Flare. So that's the turn you play, it probably won't be attacking. You can attack with it twice, and it'll die on the final time. But each time it ticks up as a saga, you will get stuff to do. Destroy a creature, draw some cards, do damage to an opponent. It's strong in the way you'd expect a 9-mana creature enchantment to be, but it is temporary due to the saganess of it all. And the final pip not dealing damage equal to all permanents you control. It's not including itself, it's other, and thus you're doing a 9 damage off the Bahamut itself. Feels a little bit underwhelming. This card feels splashy, but underwhelming. Erath is a soul sister who redistributes her counters upon death, calling back to the part of Final Fantasy VII where the players famously crack her open and harvest her organs like the yolk of an overboiled egg. She has lifelink herself to enable herself to gain life, and then you get to put a counter on her, and her death doesn't redistribute them in the spread them around kind of way. It says when she dies, you put X +1/+1 counters on each legendary creature you control, where X is the number of +1/+1 counters on her, and thus if she has 4 counters on her, your entire legendary team is getting +4/+4 permanently, which is actually a very powerful version of the death redistributing counters effect. The card seems quite strong. At present time, I can't really see a place where she would see huge amounts of play across any format, although with the overabundance of Universes Beyond stuff coming into standard, there may well be a Soul Sisters or just a white aggro weenie deck that can utilize Erath Gainsborough to buff the entire team when she dies. So that's yet to be seen, but it's certainly a possibility. Cloud Midgar Mercenary is a 2-mana 2/1 human soldier mercenary that when he enters the battlefield, you look for your library for an equipment card, reveal it and put it into your hand, then shuffle. So he's literally a tutor for equipments, much like Stoneforge Mystic. And as long as Cloud is equipped, if an ability of Cloud or an equipment attached to it triggers, that ability triggers an additional time. It's got a double white pip, making it a bit more restrictive in terms of mana cost, and it doesn't have any way to cheat the equipment in, so thus it's not as good as Stoneforge Mystic. But tutors are good. Just full stop, right? We know they're good. They're limited in Commander often. They normally play roles in both the toolboxes of mid-rangey decks, but also combo decks and other formats. I don't think this will see much play in other formats, but I really like the second bit of text on him. I love doubling up on triggers. Imagine hitting with a sword of X and Y, a sword of fire and ice, and drawing a card and shooting something for 2 twice. Draw 2 cards, do 4 damage. Give something double strike. Suddenly we're getting 4 triggers from our jits and our swords, and it just feels like a good time. I can see myself playing this in Commander for certain, but I don't see myself playing it in other formats. The Crystal's Chosen is a 7-mana sorcerer that makes 4 1/1 hero creature tokens, then you put a +1/+1 card on each creature you control, and thus it creates 8 power for 7 mana. The card is not very good, but it is probably either a turn a corner uncommon for limited, or maybe even a bomb in limited, considering 7 mana make 8 power and toughness of creatures is the floor, because it puts a count on all creatures you control, and thus can really push your current board state to be miles ahead of your opponents. Limited bomb, perhaps. Even I know what a Phoenix Down does. It's the code word for when the president's under attack, but he's on a chicken farm. Sadly, it exiles itself to do its returning of a creature to the battlefield, and it only returns creatures of 4 value or less on the graveyard to the battlefield tapped, I guess kind of signifying the resurrection of party members in Final Fantasy. Importantly, it costs 1 and then costs 2 in a tap to use it, and thus it only costs 3 mana to return a 4 CMC creature, which is actually quite cheap for a reanimation spell. It also has a second mode of exile target skeleton, spirit, or zombie something which may come up later down the line, perhaps. I don't think there's anything truly relevant in standard right now for that. All that said, 3 mana to get a 4 CMC creature out of your bin is a lower rate, but that said, I said that said twice there. But if you're getting back a 1-drop, a 2-drop, or a 3-drop, as people often are with the regeneration spells in current standard, you're going to use Helping Hand on your Oculus, for example, meaning that this is actually very, very cost inefficient. I don't think it's very good. White Aura Sight is a 4 mana, including 2 pips of white artifact. When it enters the battlefield, you exile target non-land permanent of opponent controls until it leaves. It's a Banishing Light for 4 mana, but it also taps for white mana to mana rock too. So you get a bit of extra value out of it for the slightly more expensive cost. Largely, people might be underwhelmed by this, but please keep in mind it's a 4 mana rock that makes white mana. Like, making ramp in white isn't the easiest thing in the world, and thus I think there is some added value here to it being in the white part of the pie for mono white decks in Commander, and perhaps even in Constructed. Standard itself does want artifacts for the blue-white artifact decks that are using like Repurposing Bay and Synthesizer and such, and this triggers those or can be sacked off those too, although sacking this would give them their thing back, so that seems quite bad. Overall, solid design. I'll talk about White Mage's Staff here, but I'm not going to talk about any of the other common or uncommon job cards after this. The job cards are equipments that enter the battlefield, they trigger, they create a body, in this case a 1/1 colorless hero creature token, and they attach this to it. And then all of them do a thing by giving that hero a job. In this case, it gets +1/+1, and whenever this creature attacks, you gain 1 life, and it's a cleric in addition to its other types. And then it has a 3 mana equip. So you've got to judge these as a body for 2 mana, so 2/2 for 2 with some upside of when it attacks, you gain life. But the reality is, if the staff is destroyed, you have to keep the hero. If the hero is destroyed, you have to keep the staff. So it is a versatile or perhaps resistant creature in that sense. Ultimately, the rest of this card just doesn't really do enough for the 2 whole mana to even be constructed playable in standard, but I think there's some promise here. I also just like the space, the design space of equipment bringing creatures with them. I liked for Mirrodin, I've always liked Living Weapon. It's a space that I quite enjoy, so I'm glad to see more of it coming. Zachfar is the best white card we've seen thus far. 1 mana, 0/1. Best white card in Final Fantasy, sorry. I'm not saying it's the best white card in all of Magic, that'd be insane. A 1 mana, 0/1 human soldier enters with a +1/+1 counter on it. Not a trigger, just comes in with it. You can pay 1 mana to sacrifice Zachfar. Target creature you control gains indestructible to end a turn. It gets all counters that Zachfar currently has, and you move any equipments from Zachfar onto that creature. And thus it does a lot, the low cost of 2 mana, but spread across 2 turns. The reason I think this card is quite good is that it's a 1 mana 1/2 with counter synergies, so it plays into any sort of proliferate or other strategies that it might find a home in, but also it has that benevolent bodyguard protection element of sacking itself to save one of your other bodies, namely giving it indestructible, which means that creature can still be targeted with XR removal and can still be given minus effects. So it's not quite as good as giving it hexproof, for example, but it also moves the counter from itself across to it as well, and importantly, it moves all counters, not just the one that's currently on Zachfar. So if you grow Zachfar through some proliferation style effects, you can move those counters too. If you put other things on him, like a shield counter, for example, that would move across too. And also there's that added extra value of moving equipment that are on Zachfar as well. So for example, if he happens to be carrying a Colossus Hammer in some sort of weird fucked up deck, it'll move that too. Basically, this does so much stuff, I will be shocked if this never finds a home, because it's a very, very good piece of utility at 1 mana. If anything, at a bare minimum, I think this is my pick for white card for cube of the cards we've seen thus far. Astrologian's Planisphere is a 2 mana equipment with job select. So enters and makes that hero token. Equipped creature is a wizard in addition to its other types, and it has whenever you cast a non-creature spell and whenever you draw your 3rd card each turn, put a +1/+1 counter on that creature, and the equip cost is 2. Earlier on, the common one we saw, the what the fuck was it called? The White Mage stuff had an equip cost of 3. This is rare, it's 2 mana, it makes a 1/1 and it equips for 2. But importantly, it's got super prowess. And what I mean by that is it triggers not only on all non-creatures, because it triggers on planeswalkers, artifacts, instant sorceries, battles, enchantments, but also it puts the counters on the creature that's on permanently. And thus it's like a super version of prowess. But it also, on top of all of that, they've really pushed it to also trigger on 3rd card of the turn every turn as well. And on top of all of that, the way to evaluate this is, again, if the Planisphere is destroyed, you keep the body. If the body is destroyed, you keep the Planisphere. But importantly, the counters that you're putting onto the body attached to the Planisphere, in this case the hero, those counters stick around on the fucking hero. So if you then move this to a different creature, that hero is still going to be significantly large if you've cast several spells with it in play with the Planisphere attached to it. This equipment seems very, very good, and I would be surprised again if it doesn't show up in some sort of prowess deck. Now, I don't think it's good enough to show up in Modern per se, but something like Standard or Pioneer could have a prowess deck where this just works. Jill, Shiva's Dominant, is an interesting 3 mana 2/2. It is a mana war of sorts. It bounces and returns a non-land permanent to its owner's hand. Importantly, it does target, but it's anything. It's not a permanent that an opponent controls, and thus has even the added utility and value of being able to return something you control to your owner's hand. It is like the classic Mana War, but it's actually really rare to see a rare powered up version of this like coming into the game, with Aether Channeler being the only one that comes to mind. There's a 3-mana powered up version of this. There's also Baron, I guess, as well, that has extra text on it. It does the Mana War thing, and there's extra stuff as well. But the point here with Jill and Aether Channeler as a comparison is it returns a target non-land permanent. But then Jill does like a whole load of extra shit too. She can be in the command zone, but for 5 mana and tap, you can flip her. And then she becomes Shiva, a 4/5 Saga creature that does 2 pips of target creature can't be blocked this turn. In essence, she becomes unblockable to give you a 4/5 unblockable creature, which is a strong threat in a tempo deck. And her final pip is tap all lands your opponent controls, exile Shiva, then return her to the battlefield. Now, importantly with the flip Saga creatures is that they all transform back. They become the other side again. That means, unlike the 9-mana Saga we looked at earlier, you're not just paying for a creature temporarily, you're paying for a creature to transform into this temporarily. And even further to that, because the front end is an enter the battlefield effect to bounce target permanent, when Shiva transforms back, she will re-trigger the trigger on the front to bounce something again. There's huge amounts of like value tempo here. We have a 3-mana creature that returns any permanent to an opponent's hand, or even your hand if you want to save something. Then you can dump 5 mana into it to create basically a 4/5 unblockable for a turn, and then you tap all of your opponent's lands. Now, the tapping lands thing is a really weird effect that I just don't really know what or why that exists here. Like, it's weird on this body, because essentially tapping all the lands is giving you a window to combo in, but meanwhile, a 3-mana Mana War that becomes a 4/5 unblockable for 5 mana isn't really a combo card. Jill is super strange as a Magic card, and I'm kind of here for it. I really like this kind of open and strange design. Matoya is an Archon Elder, a 1/4 human warlock that whenever you scry or surveil, draw a card, and it reminds you to draw after you scry or surveil. It's another 3-mana utility dork that is a card of art that does some cool stuff, and I love this space. This is I'll be honest, this is going to be another stressful spot in a lot of people's decks, because I think the most stressed spot in any part of any commander deck and any cube is your 3-mana weird creatures, and Matoya is definitely one of them. Your Shota rule is the very definition of fucking around in Commander. A 6-mana 3/5 cat druid, and yes, that's just cat ears. God knows how many nipples they have, or what they... I'm not going to talk about them without the clothes on. I'm sure that's been drawn somewhere on the internet. At the beginning of your end step, exile target creature you control, then returns to battle under its own control. If this is the first end step of the turn, there's an additional end step afterwards. So you flicker, then you trigger to go to a second end step, trigger again, and flicker again. Your Shota is a Thassa, a Conjurer's Closet, a teleportation circle that does it twice, and makes all of the aforementioned do it twice as well. She's super best friends with Yorion, because you will play a Yorion, flicker out your board, they come back, your Shota triggers, flicker out Yorion till the next end step, which you're about to have another one of. Yorion comes back, puts all your stuff into play, gives you more fucking ETB triggers. It's gorgeous. And then Shota triggers again, flickers Yorion out, and Yorion re-enters and just gobbles everything up to go to the next player's up end step to come back. And suddenly everyone at the table is very annoyed with you because you're taking a lot of game actions and no one's quite sure if it's actually making you win or not. And that's the kind of Magic that I want to play. I want to take more game actions than you. I think the unique fuck about nature of this card, a commander sort of fun fuck about staple, plus the mythic rarity, the hype of the set, the scalping, the increased pack prices. I have a feeling this is going to be one of the cards that's going to remain an expensive card going through Final Fantasy's lifetime. The pre-order prices are already over $70, which I think is probably too high, but it's going to be an expensive card. Ardin the Usurper is a rare, not a mythic, which is crazy to me for the effect we're about to see. A 8-mana 4/4 legendary elder human noble that says all demons you control have menace, lifelink, and haste. That's some fucking juicy text for a demon deck, and I'm saying that as someone who owns a Battle Core demon deck. And Star Scourge. At the beginning of your combat on your turn, exile up to 1 target creature card from a graveyard. Bearing in mind it's not your graveyard. Oh, this is juicy. If you exile a card this way, create a token that's a copy of that card, except it's a 5/5 black demon. And that means it's a 5/5 black demon with menace, lifelink, and haste. And thus you can attack with it the turn it comes in. And there's no finality token, counter, there's no fucking second end of turn. It's just a permanent thing you get. Now the downside is this guy costs 8 fucking mana. As a commander, he's, in my eyes, borderline unplayable. He's so expensive. But I guess if you play like a really, I don't know, wrath-heavy, controlling strategy to then play Ardin when you're, everyone's low on resources and you're quite far ahead, that could work. Also, I guess he's quite a fun reanimator spell or reanimator target for other formats where you put 2 things in the bin. Ardin, for example, and Grizzlebrand or Atraxa. You reanimate Ardin, go to combat, trigger, reanimate Atraxa. Atraxa now has haste as well, which is one of the few keywords you didn't have before. Bada bing, bada boom, you're doing some stuff. You're doing a lot of stuff. Of course, that then is susceptible to getting killed on the end of your first main phase if they have a removal spell. So actually, you're just better off making the Atraxa or the Grizzlebrand. But look, I didn't come here not to win more, of course. Circle of Power is a 4-mana sorcery. You draw 2 cards, lose 2 life, and create a 0/1 black wizard that shoots your opponent for for 1 damage whenever you cast a non-creature spell. And wizard you control get +1/+0 and lifelink until end of turn. Look, the card's 4 mana, so it does quite a bit, but not enough for 4 mana, I don't think. However, I do think this might be quite strong in perhaps somewhere like Standard, for example, if the wizard deck ends up being good. There's quite a lot of wizards in this set, including a legendary that its payoff is making wizards. So if you already have a lot of wizards in play, and you do this thing where you make a wizard, and those wizards ping your opponents already, and then they get lifelink and shit, like, this spell does so much if you have a strong wizard board, and it does enough to be okay on a empty board, I guess. Speaking of wizards, it's a 2-mana, 2/1 human wizard called Dark Confidant. That's right, if you're an old man, and if your knees hurt, and if your back is sore, you know what this card does. At the beginning of your upkeep with a top card of your library, you lose life equal to its CMC and you put it into your hand. It is card draw, it is power, but at what cost? At any cost. I'll do a whole video, perhaps. I'm considering doing it on the fall of Dark Confidant from premium $40 like super staple in Modern, a chase card for fucking Modern Masters 1, and here it is as a mythic going into Standard, and I actually don't think it'll see much play. Like, it's just not as good as Unholy Annex, which draws you cards, and when you have a demon, shoots your opponent instead of you. And if you're playing this alongside Annex, when you see a room at the top of your library, it's both sides combined. So Annex, for example, will dome you for approximately 1 million damage. The Darkness Crystal, not to be confused with the Dark Crystal, which will show up in a secret there eventually. It's a 4-mana legendary artifact that says black spells you cost 1 less to cast. That's right, it's a jet medallion with more text. If a non-token creature an opponent controls would die, exile it instead, and you gain 2 life. So it is graveyard hate. It turns off so many combos in Commander with this one line of text, and you gain life every time too. And wait, there's more. I mean, generally I think that like at 4 mana for like reduce the cost of your spells and graveyard hate the shit out of your opponent's combos, these 2 effects are arguably good enough for the 4 mana, but there is more. If you have 6 mana spare, you can tap it, put target creature card exiled with the Darkness Crystal onto the battlefield tapped under your control with 2 additional +1/+1 counters. Like, it just keeps going. There's just more and more text. Now, importantly, and really importantly, that final statement, that 6 mana do all this shit with a thing under it, is not restricted to sorcery speed, which would really have killed that ability for me. So you can sit with your mana up, you can be in blue-black, for example, counter magics and removal spells, you're passing around the table, people's stuff is dying and going under the Darkness Crystal, the table hates you, and then you reanimate the scariest fucking thing under it with the Darkness Crystal. This card is going to be an absolute Commander staple. I'm in love with it. It's very good. Fang Philly is a 3-mana 2/3. Whenever 1 or more cards leave your graveyard, you draw a card and you lose 1 life. So it's a combo with Sakonran, for example. Getting things out of your bin and drawing cards is good. I do like this space that they've been exploring recently of when things leave your graveyard, do a thing, because I think it leads to some really fun, like, synergistic gameplay of assembling engines. She also merges with Vanil, the cheerful lassie. I don't know what any of these words mean except Vanil. Vanil is a flavor of ice cream. Vanil is a cheerful lassie. She's a 4-mana 3/2 green creature that enters the battlefield, mills 2 cards and returns a permanent card from your graveyard to your hand. Importantly, basically, she's a 1-mana more like Eternal Witness. But as she enters, and she's a human, which is a relevant creature type, but as she enters, you mill 2, so it gives you some more selection. This is an absolutely solid uncommon anyway. But at the beginning of your first main phase, if you have both Vanil and Fang in play, you pay 5 mana and you create Ragnarok. Ragnarok, the Divine Deliverance, is a vigilant, menacing, trampling, reaching, hasting, and when it dies, it's a 7/6 by the way as well, it's a beast avatar, not a god, a beast avatar. And when it dies, destroy up to 1 target permanent and return target non-legend creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Wow, that's a lot of good shit. Now, of course, you gotta pay a 3-mana creature, you gotta pay a 4-mana creature, then you gotta pay 5 mana and not have your opponent fucking kill one of them. Although I guess, does Vanil's ability use the stack? I'm not actually sure. Sometime in the comment section below. Can I pay 5 and someone removes one of the creatures and I get absolutely fucked? Or do I pay the 5 and exile them and that's it? I pay on resolution, right? That's how I think this works. Ragnarok is a scary creature. It's a good blocker, it's a good attacker with both evasion and trample, which is a pseudo evasion and evasion with a menace. It's randomly got reach. It's one of those cards people are going to forget about having reach, fly in, and you're absolutely fucked. And then when it dies, when it gets killed, after you've done all this effort, it's destroy target permanent, which is just pretty solid effect generally. Bear in mind, not non-land, can hit lands. I love to see that. And return target non-legendary permanent card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So weirdly, it can't bring back either of the other sides of it, but that's fine. That kind of makes sense, right? Otherwise, you get back Vanil, then you get back Fang, and it'll be an engine in and of itself, and that would make it probably very, very good. I think this is just good enough to see casual play. Oh, I think it's teetering on the edge. I just don't know if command. So standard right now, there's like 2 mana prowess token generating fucking equipments and stuff. So I don't think trying to play a 3 mana creature and a 4 mana creature and then pay 5 mana is where you want to be. But in a slower standard format, I can definitely see that being an engine that's actually reasonable. Bearing in mind this is an uncommon, so maybe this isn't aimed at constructed, but I think it's teetering on the edge of a slower format, that's for sure. But of course, standard only would take to be 5 years now, so we're never going to see that standard format where this could see play. Kane, Traitorous Dragoon. They're never going to beat the fucking command allegations with this stuff. 3 mana, 2/4. During your turn, Kane is flying. When Kane deals combat damage to a player, that player gains control of Kane. If they do, you draw that many cards, create that many tap treasure tokens, and lose that much life. So he's going to boop someone when flying, draw 2, make 2 treasures, and lose 2. Pretty reasonable effect, if I'm completely honest. And of course, if you suit him up with some gear, let's say you give him lifelink and trample and +3/+3 or something, smack someone for 5, lose 5, gain 5, draw 5, make 5 tap treasures. This guy seems very solid. Of course, you're going to give them to an opponent, but to be honest, that's a political tool. In Commander, you can say, would you like access? Would you like to have my Kane to boop someone? Maybe you want to boop me back. Maybe you can just play boop Saru, boops your uncle. Anyway, Kane seems very fun for Commander. Marlboro is the name of a cigarette brand, and it has bad breath written on it, which I think is funny because smoking gives you bad breath and it's fucking disgusting. That's right, I am an anti-smoker, and I've not really talked about it on the channel before. Under with that, here's Swamp Cycling 2. So it's a 4/4, 6 mana creature. When it enters, each opponent discards a card, loses 2 life, next to the top 3 cards of the library. It's got a reasonable effect on top of it for basically a common card from Limited. This is a limited card. But Swamp Cycling 2 is very good. Not good enough to see constructed play in like Legacy or Modern, because you got Swamp Cycling 1 with Trolls of Khazad-dûm from Lord of the Rings. But importantly, it's going to be in standard alongside the swamps that surveil all of the surveil lands from Karlov Manor. So with just 2 mana, you can go find yourself a swamp, put this in the bin, and every reanimation target as well. So that could be something we see. That seems like a reasonable line. A summon Primal Odin. His name's Odin. He's not even a god. He's just a Saga Knight. 6 mana, 5/3. On entering the battlefield, we get 1 Saga counter. Destroy target creature an opponent controls. So it's a super Cabra at 6 mana. At 2, this creature gains whenever it does combat damage to a player, the player loses the game. So for a turn, Primal Odin becomes a fucking Phage the Untouchable. And if you fail to kill someone with it, you can then just draw 2 cards and lose 2 life. Or should I say, draw 2 cards and each player loses 2 lives. Actually hurts everyone. All of these effects are absolutely solid at 6 mana. Again, temporary Saga creature means that you don't get to have this 5/3 for very long. Only 1 turn of actually being an effective attacker, but it is a very effective attacker that insta-kills your opponent. Also, Cactar and Tifa that we're coming to. There's a lot of random cards in this set that just one-shot people, which I find very, very interesting. I like the splashy scariness of this card. I just don't think it's very good. So I like the design. I like the feel of it. The Primal Odin when it comes down is a scary motherfucker. But ultimately, people will be able to block it. You have to give it some evasion and similar. And it dies to pretty much every removal spell in the game as well. I mean, being tapped down for 1 turn essentially turns off the entire second half of this card, right? Interesting space. I don't think it's that good. Xenos Ygalvus. 5 mana, 4/4. When it enters the battlefield, you choose an opponent's creature. Every other creature except for Xenos and that creature get -2/-2. And when that creature leaves the battlefield, you can transform out Galvus and he becomes a big fucking dragon. An 8/8 dragon to be exact, with flying, which is pretty good. And then you choose an opponent when it transforms. So when that chosen player loses the game, you win the game. That's right, there's an instant win card right there to go alongside our instant loss card that we just talked about. Weird space to commonly see in this set, but here we are. Do I like this card? I don't know. There's a lot of hoops to jump through to get it to transform, and then you gotta like kill someone. But this is the kind of card that's gonna piss off a lot of Commander players. I don't think it's particularly good, but it will blindside some people and make them upset. Zord Humble God is a 5 mana black creature that I think could make for a very, I'm gonna say fun Commander. It's fun for you, but not anyone else. Indestructible. When it enters the battlefield, each player sacrifices half the non-god creatures they control of their choice rounded down. Keep in mind, because it's rounded down, it cannot edict someone who's got 1 creature in play. You would go to half and round down to 0, which is sad. And when a player sacrifices another creature, put a +1/+1 counter on Zodiac. It's not oppressive. It's not too brutal. It's not some protection. It's a fun 5-drop for Devotion to Black and similar. The art's kind of cool. And then, yeah, it just gets really fucking big when you play it onto a board full of creatures, which is pretty neat. Clive is a 6 mana 5/5. When he enters the battlefield, you can wheel, you can discard your hand and draw cards equal to your Devotion to Red. Very interesting and unique effect there. And then for 6 mana, you can tap him, exile him, and return to the battlefield transformed as Ifrit, the Warden of Inferno, which when it enters the battlefield is a 9/9. It fights 1 other target creature. Again, interestingly, not opponent controls, which is what we normally see these days. So it can just kill one of your creatures if you really fancy it. Weird fringe cases, I know. But basically, it's a removal spell. And then for Brimstone, it says add 4 red mana to your mana pool. If a Freak has 3 or more Lord counters on it, exile it, then return it to the battlefield. At which point it will enter the battlefield with 4 mana in your mana pool, allow you to discard your hand and draw cards into your devotion again, which in this case is a minimum of 2 thanks to Clive. So it allows you to do this thing where you generate mana and draw cards, and I like it. His flipping ability is only at sorcery speed, as I'm seeing on a lot of the mythic legendary transforming cards from, I think this is Final Fantasy 15. I think this card is deceptively powerful. It's fucking strange and very weird. Like, wheeling equal to devotion could be good. You could discard your hand and draw, the ceiling is huge. You could have devotion to red equal 100 and draw your entire deck, for example. But obviously the floor is quite low too, but it is as low as 2, literally. And then it has this like fucking fight ability and then the mana ability, and it's interesting. It's definitely interesting. Deceptively powerful. This might actually be a very, very strong commander, or even a solid part of the 99 in some really fun sort of mono red spellcaster decks or blue red spellcaster decks. Wheeling is strong, I've heard. I've heard it's a good effect. Fire Magic is probably the most legacy playable card among the previews so far, and no, I'm not joking. So 1 mana, deal 1 damage to each creature is really unusual. You don't see it that often. Keep in mind that Blazing Volley and similar versions of it at sorcery speed doing this effect that the first part of Fire Magic does have seen legacy play for killing Delvers and nowadays Orcish Bowmasters and similar. Now, Fire Magic is a tiered spell, which is this new mechanic where you choose 1 additional cost. So you pay the red, and then you can either pay 0 to do 1 damage to each creature, or you can pay 2 to do 2, or you can pay 5 to do 3. Now, the reason I think this is so playable is it's a 1 mana instant speed answer to, like I said, Delvers, although they're less common anymore, Dragon Rage Channelers before they flip, and most importantly, an Orcish Bowmaster. 1 mana, kill them off the board, continue what you're doing, like casting Brainstorm, for instance. Hell, you can put Brainstorm on the stack, they can flash in Orcish Bowmaster, and you can Fire Magic the Bowmaster off the board, killing the token alongside it for the low cost of 1 mana, also hitting other things for 1 damage too. And the reason I think it's truly going to be actually a consideration for the Eternal Metal like Legacy in Modern is that it has modal elements too. So you aren't just stuck with a 1 mana Blazing Volley in your sideboard that you bring in for specific matchups. It actually gets wider application. So for example, Fiery Cannonade and Kozilek's Return are 3 mana, deal 2 instant speed to all creatures, and they have seen play across the years too. I guess Volcanic Fallout's probably the traditional one, a double red and 1 colorless, right? This is a card that can be the kill Orcish Bowmaster to resolve your Brainstorm without taking a bunch of damage and give them a big board state, but it'll also be deal 2 damage to all creatures your opponents control, which includes their Stoneforge Mystics and similar out of D&T. And then it has another mode, deal 3 damage to all creatures, which again is a thing that can clear out a load of random bodies, but obviously it's 6 mana, which can be the less commonly cast mode. But that's the thing, it's modal, which means it's got loads of applications and options, and I think this card is very, very good. This is my pick for best red card we've seen so far. Firion the Wild Rose Warrior is the other red card that I'm pretty hot for. So essentially it's a 3 mana 3/3. It says a quick creature you control have haste. And then it's got all this really interesting text, the text box below. Super cool effect that does a lot of really wild and interesting things. Whenever a non-token equipment you control enters, create a token that's a copy of it, except it has this equipment's equip abilities cost 2 less to activate. Sacrifice that token at the beginning of the next end step. So there's a few things this does. Firstly, any equipment that has an equip cost of 2 enters the battlefield and can be immediately equipped, because you get a second copy of it that has a lower equip cost. So your Swords of X and Y, your Jits, Swiftfoot Boots, all sorts of stuff. More importantly though, the token copy counts, like even if it hasn't got the haste enabling of a Swiftfoot Boots or a Lightning Greaves, it does that anyway. So you get this equipment that enters, gets a 0 equip cost, equipped to one of your creatures, including Firion for example, and boom, you've now got a hasting threat. It also means you can attack with both equipments if you can afford to pay for the first equip cost too, giving you now 2 Swords of Fire and Ice, for example. The real spice though would be slamming an Ember Cleave, making a second copy of it, and going both to a creature or 2 different creatures and giving double strike and trample to 2 bodies. Problem there is that it's a legendary equipment, and thus one of the copies would be killed as part of the legend rule as a state-based action before you do any of this stuff. So Ember Cleave is not the answer. But in essence, there's got to be other equipments there that reduce their costs, that upon being copied are very strong. Firion at 3 mana is probably not playable in Modern, but the Hammer Time Shelf, for example. Imagine Firion allowing you to put a Colossus Hammer on 2 different creatures and just absolutely smacking the ever-loving shit out of your opponent. Of course, Colossus Hammer's equip cost will only reduce to 6, but I'm imagining a world where you are equipping with Sigarda's Aid, or you've got a Pure Steel Paladin in play. There's a lot of different things to try out with Firion, and I think that's kind of exciting. This card seems like it's pretty damn good. Gilgamesh, Master at Arms, a 6 mana 6/6 when it enters or attacks. Load up 6 cards in your library. You put any number of equipment cards from among them onto the battlefield. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So it's looking for equipments, it's drawing them and playing them. So you got cost reduction, You got card draw and card advantage. And then also, on top of all of that, it just keeps fucking going. When you put one or more equipment onto the battlefield this way, you may attach one of them to a samurai you control. And Gilgamesh is a fucking samurai. So you're going to get at least one free equip out of it too. Woo, boy. Hot fucking damn. It's 6 mana, so it's not going to be constructed playable anywhere but commander. But fuck me, does this feel like a cool commander, or even part of the 99. Imagine with the past card I just spoke about, Firion, the Wild Rose Warrior, where each of those 6 equipment that you put into play, and you're not hitting 6, I see your average hitting 3 or 2. Both of them get copies as well. Oh boy, that'd be some hot stuff. The equipment decks in Commander are eating absolutely gorgeously, and I think a few of these might make it through into equipment decks in Modern or Pioneer too, perhaps. Maybe spawning something in Standard too. Bards and Boko is a 5 mana 4/3 with affinity for birds, which is pretty fun. When Bards and Boko enters, each other bird you control does damage equal to its power to target creature an opponent controls. The ATBs triggers and makes all your birds beat someone up. I think that's fun. I don't think it's particularly good, but I think it's definitely fun. Commune with beavers. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Beaver is like, you know, a slang word for vagina, right? So, yeah, that's all I got. Pussy. Esper Origins are 2 mana Surveil 2, then you gain 2 life. If the spell was cast from a graveyard, exile it and put it into the battlefield transform with a finality counter on it. So the plan is to play it early, flash it back later. I have to observe that Surveil 2, gain 2 life is a dog shit effect. So paying like fucking 6 mana to get Surveil 4, gain 4 is not good. Let's look at the Saga. Reveal to a card of your library. It's a permanent card. Put it into your hand. Woof. Add 2 green mana. Other creatures you control get +2/+2 and gain trample on turn to turn. Okay, so it's a very, very slow, quite expensive version of Overrun. So ultimately will kill people in limited, but I am shocked this is a rare, but I'll be shocked if it's an uncommon, I guess. This card is not good. Realm Reborn. They're never beating the allegations of being a commander set here. 6 mana, do nothing enchantment, some might argue, but I don't think it is. When it enters, it does nothing, but it has a static ability, which is other permanents you control have tap, add 1 mana of any color. So that's importantly other permanents. All your lands are now prismatic omened. All your creatures are mana dorks. All your artifacts and enchantments are mana rocks. And that includes all your tokens, your treasures, your food, your clues. This seems to go hard in those decks. Of course, Jahira already exists. Jahira, who does this for tokens already, and I play her as a commander in Red Green Dragon Ball Bees. Yeah, it's an expensive version of those kinds of effects, but it's still pretty solid. I can see this being a pseudo commander staple. One of those cards that sits around at like $5, $10. It's like Bootlegger's Stash, but better. Okay, Bootlegger's Stash is $1. It was a mythic, a set that no one wanted to open, and it was hyped to all shit during previous season, including me. I thought the card was actually quite good. I think it's better than people think. It just doesn't go in every deck. I guess Realm Reborn goes in a deck that makes treasures, clues, and food, which is in most decks. Summoner's Grimoire is a 4 mana job select equipment that enters the battlefield and makes a hero, and that hero gets equipped with it, and that hero is a shaman. When this creature attacks, you may put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. Okay, so it makes the shaman cheat mana on creatures. That's pretty good. If that card's an enchantment card, it is tapped and attacking. So it's enabling the summoning of Saga creatures, which are your guardian forces, to smack people immediately. Cool effect. Feels like commander to me. I don't think this will be a constructed playable card. Maybe in standard, you could cheat a Traxxas out with this, but you can already do that with like that green beast from Duskmoor anyway. Maybe this is better than the beast. Yeah, maybe. Tifa Lockhart is a 2 mana 1/2 trample landfall. Whenever land enters the battlefield under your control, double Tifa Lockhart's power until end of turn. So if you give it +4/+4, which exists in standard right now, what's it called? Oh, that's it. Titanic Growth. It's in Wildsfell Drain. You can give it +4/+4. You play a Fable passage, trigger. She's now a 10/10. Crack the Fable passage, trigger. She's now a 20/20. She has trample. Bang goes the dynamite. Is that good? I actually think it's reasonable. I think there are decks that could play around that and other things, other landfall elements in the deck, which will make it absolutely a reasonable deck and just have this random Tifa Lockhart combo that you have to be quite scared of. Town Greeter is a 2 mana human citizen that enters the battlefield, makes you mill 4. You put a land from among them into your hand. If it's a town, you gain 2 life. So it's an upside power crept version of the classic Satyr Voyage Finder. No, that's not his name. Satyr Wayfinder. Town Greeter is power crept because A, gives you more upside when you hit a town, and B, human and citizen is more likely to have synergy in your deck than Satyr. I'm sorry, old friend, you're being retired. Town Greeter is significantly better, especially if the towns are good. Charmin Chocobos are 3 mana 3/2. You may look at top card of your library at any time. You play lands and bird spells from the top of your library. If a land or bird you control enter the battlefield, cause the trigger ability of an opponent you control to trigger, that ability triggers a second time. Wow, we've got bird payoffs. This card is pre-ordering at $129. I have no fucking idea why. Look, the card is cool and everything. It's a mythic. It's got some interesting text on it. It's got this new space that we've not really seen before with bird typal. I mean, it's existed, but not quite to this extent. Maybe there's a combo that I don't know about. Maybe this just goes infinite with a hand sandwich and I'm missing something. But I don't think $129 pre-order price is worth it. That's fucking crazy talk. Absolute Virtue is pre-ordering for only $30. So I just do not understand what's going on. Check out other than it being the, I guess, the most iconic thing in the thing. Anyway, it's a 8 mana, 8/8. Your spells can't be countered, has flying, and you have protection from each of your opponents. Yeah, this guy is... It's an interesting, like, sort of Platinum Angel equivalent, where you can't be dealt damage or targeted by your opponents. You can't be edicted, for example. But the Absolute Virtue itself has no protection built in, except for being a really thick boy with some absolutely chunky stats as an 8/8. I think it's a really cool and interesting card. That's all I've got to say about it. It's not particularly powerful. It's splashy. It'll come down at the right time in a game of Commander and upset people because they haven't got a spot removal spell for it, but it still dies to Erath, so it's not exactly unfair, and I think that's why I like it. Now, play an Absolute Virtue and equip a Lightning Greaves to it. Now you have protection from your opponents, and this has Hexproof, or Shroud, should I say. And we're cooking. Still dies to Erath, can't die to an Edict, you can't target the player unless it's each opponent. Yeah, I think this is fun. In a weird way that other people probably won't agree with me, I think this is fun. Belthea and Frown is a 3 mana 4/3 reach. Vehicles you control get +1/+1 and have vigilance and reach. And essentially, when they fly a vehicle into your opponent's face by crewing it, you may pay 3 mana and get an additional combat phase as long as it's the first combat phase of your turn. Not the most unique mechanically. Extra combat steps, a buff, a reach. She's got bunny ears, so I'm assuming a lot of people have masturbated over her. This card's okay. Sid Totems Artifice is a 4 mana 4/4 that has 15 different arts this set, which I think is very neat. It's to show that Sid shows up in all the Final Fantasy games. I mean, I thought that happened with a load of stuff, but Sid's the only one to get the 15 art treatment, as far as I know. Anyway, he's got cycling. He's a 4/4/4. He's a human artificer. Artifact creatures and heroes you control get +1/+1 for each artificer you control and each artificer card in your graveyard. That can have any number of cards named Sid Totems Artificer. I think it's just a really cute and quaint design space. I think it's interesting that it's a legendary creature, right? So you can play 15 Sids, but you're going to struggle to have them in play. So I guess it prompts you to put things that allow you to turn off the legend rule, like Mirror Gallery, or the 3 mana version of it that's much better than Mirror Gallery. That was from Kamigawa. Either way, cool design. Importantly, it doesn't buff humans or artificers itself. It says specifically artifact creatures and heroes get the buff, but it's for each artificer in play, so including this one, and then each artificer in your graveyard, so the ones that you cycle in future. So you could play all 15, have Sid in play to get access to his ability, and then cycle the rest into the bin to still grow your team. Pretty cool for some sort of token artifact deck, and you have one in the command zone and multiple in the deck as well, which I think is real neat. Interestingly, the cycling cost doesn't get higher with command attacks. So if you were to put Sid into your hand and cycle him, and then choose to put him back in the command zone and put Sid in your hand and cycle him, you can keep cycling my load. Putting commanders into your hand isn't that easy to do, but it's something you could try and do. The Emperor of Palmatia is a 2 mana 2/2 that taps to add blue and red. Spend this mana only to cast non-creature spells. Okay, mana token blue red, fine. And if you cast a non-creature spell, if at least 4 mana was spent to cast it, put a counter on the Emperor. And then if it has 3 or more counters, transform it, and it transforms into the Lord Master of Hell. Starfall, when the Lord Master of Hell attacks, it deals X damage to each opponent, where X is the number of non-creature and non-land cards in your graveyard. A very strong effect. This card is pretty damn neat. There's a lot of hoops to jump through. You have to cast a spell that costs 4 mana or more to put counters on it, and do that multiple times to flip it over, which, you know, that's actually difficult to do. What are they doing? This doesn't just do the thing easily. You've got to work for it, which I like. Also, the Lord Master of Hell is one hell of a name for a card. Even if this guy, is he a fairy? He's not a fairy. He's a human noble wizard. He looks like a fairy. I don't know. Card's neat. Gladulus Amisitia is a big man with a big sword that looks a bit like an aircraft carrier. He has 6 mana 6/6. When he enters the battlefield, search your card before a land, put into the battlefield, tap, then shuffle. So you get basically half of a Primeval Titan's ETB trigger on this guy. And whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, another target you control gets +2/+2 trample until end of turn, which is a pretty strong effect that you can do a lot in a deck that wants to make land drops. Quite a strong landfall utility piece, or even a commander, if I do say so myself, because it's like half of a, I say half, it's a portion of a Golos too. People don't like tutors in the command zone. This guy is a tutor in the command zone. Card's quite good for an uncommon, like really quite good for a 6 mana uncommon. Kefka is a 5 mana 4/5 mythic. When it enters the battlefield or attacks, each player discards a card. That includes yourself. You draw a card for each card type among cards discarded this way. So you're in a command mana games, you're going to probably draw 2 cards, at best 4, but normally 2. 8 mana, each opponent sacrifices a permanent of their choice. You transform Kefka, and Kefka becomes the ruler of ruin. Flying, whenever an opponent loses life during your turn, you draw that many cards. Wowza, that is one hell of a bit of text. I mean, you do need to pay a 5 mana creature, have it survive, pay another 8 mana, but along the way, you get ETB triggers, attack triggers, and if the 8 mana trigger goes on the stack, even if Kefka is killed, still everyone sacrifices a permanent. So it kind of like rewards you along the way, and if you get there, you're a 5/7 flying creature that the moment you start hitting people with creatures, you're drawing cards. Very strong effect. Just costs a hell of a lot of fucking mana to get there. Kuja Genome Sorcerer is a 4 mana 3/4. At the beginning of your end step, create a tapped 0/1 black wizard creature token with whenever you cast a non-creature spell, this token does 1 damage to each opponent. Then if you control 4 or more wizards, you can transform Kuja, and the transformed Kuja becomes Trance Kuja, Fates Divided, which is a 4/6 avatar wizard that says if a wizard you control would deal damage to an opponent or player, it deals double that damage instead. This is what I mentioned earlier about a payoff for having wizards. I think it's a very cool payoff as well, and at 4 mana, it may even be constructed playable in standard, and thus cards that generate and create wizards or just wizards themselves may be pretty strong players in that deck archetype if it can compete with Monstrous Rampage and Cozy's fucking Steel Cutter. And a reasonable commander to build around too. Lightning Army of 1 is a 3 mana 3/2 human soldier with First Strike, Trample, and Lifelink, and she has Stagger, which is a very cool way of doing an effect we've seen a million times before. When lightning deals combat damage to a player, until your next turn, if a source would deal damage to that player or opponent that player controls, deals doubles that damage instead. So it's a damage doubler, which is very neat. I do like. There's also some alternate arts for this that are already pre-ordering for silly money. But importantly, she has First Strike. So when she hits your opponent, all your other creatures will deal double damage after the First Strike has resolved. If you give a double strike, she can also hit your opponent, trigger the ability, and then hit her again, which would then double again, I believe. And then you've got like double damage on the first lot, quad damage on the next lot. It gets complicated. Importantly, it's to your next turn as well. So essentially, if you hit someone with lightning, you now have very good blocks on the following turn when people swing into you. You can even really catch someone out by not explaining that ahead of time too, which I think is pretty interesting. Maybe pretty scummy too. Noctis, the Prince of Lucas, is a 4 mana 4/3 lifelinker. That says you may cast artifact spells from your graveyard by paying 3 life in addition to their cost, and they come in with a finality counter. Whoa-wee, I love me some fucking about with the graveyard, especially in this Bomberman, tricksy bullshit that Noctis will enable. You'll be able to play entire sequences out of your graveyard. You can't do entire egg packages and reload them, thanks to the fact that Noctis says that those things have a finality counter on them. But if you start flickering stuff, you can also take finality counters off things too. This card is very cool. Rinoa, Heartily, 5 mana, 4/4. When it enters, create a dog. What's the dog called? Angelo. And then whenever Rinoa Heartily attacks another target creature you control gets +1/+1 until the end of your turn for each creature you control. It's from Final Fantasy VIII. I've played that game. I don't remember this dog. Either way, yeah, sure. She's a 5 mana 4/4 that buffs a creature. Brings an extra body with her. 5 mana for 5 power. Bit more power when you're to combat. It's not very exciting. Shantoto, Tactician's Magician, is a 3 mana 0/4 dwarf wizard. And don't see dwarves that often in Magic. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, Shantoto gets +X/+0, where X is that spell's mana cost. Already a very strong prowess effect on a 3 mana creature. This is bordering on constructed playable, I think. And if X equals 4 or more, draw a card. Wow, we throw that in there for the commander players too. Decent card. It's probably not beating out the fucking bird wizard that gives your creatures trample when you cast spells, but it's close. Score is a rare. He's 4 mana. He's a 3/4. When a creature you control attacks alone, it gains double strike into end of turn. I do love this effect. Love me or Rafika the Many. Whenever Score deals combat damage to a player, turn target a permanent card with mana value 3 or less from the graveyard to the battlefield. Oh, fuck. I think I'm building Squall. I love double strike effects. I love returning 3 CMC stuff to play. I love 3 CMCs like Flicker Wisp, and this is right up my alley. And it's the only Final Fantasy I've played any extensive amount of. The trailer for Final Fantasy VIII was one of the things that made me want to play Final Fantasy when I was a kid, because the CGI was insane and the swords were cool. I think I'm building Squall. Terra Magical Adept is a 3 mana 4/2. When it enters, mill 5 cards, pop up to 1 enchantment card, mill this way into your hand. Then 6 mana, tap her, flip her over, transform her into create a token to copy of target non-legendary enchantment could you control. Fuck me, that's good. It gains haste. If it's a saga, put up to 3 lore counters on it. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. Woo boy. And at 4 pips, she does 1 turn, 2 turn, 3 turn, 4th turn round. Put 10 mana in your pool, split between the 5 colours, 2 of each, and then flip her back over. At which point she mills, puts another enchantment into your hand, which allows you to then play that enchantment quite easily with the 10 mana you had, or just pay Trance, where you pay 6 mana, tap her, exile Terra, then return to the battlefield transformed, which means you double up an enchantment, and so on and so on. This is a Rube Goldberg machine of bullshit. And if you have a doubling season in play, don't forget when you create a token, it's a copy of target non-legendary enchantment, it will enter, and you won't be sacking the other copy. So you get 2 copies of a thing. If you start copying multiple Primal Vigors and doubling seasons, oh boy, we start doing silly shit. This card is incredibly splashy. for a mythic. It's 3 mana, so it's absolutely like affordable as a command zone threat that just will get you some card draw as well by milling 5 and picking one out of the bins. Card selection. This card's good. This card's really good. Any Enchantress deck with red green is going to want this, and it can sit in the command zone too. Ultimisia, Time Sorceress, a 5 mana 4/5. When it enters the battlefield or attacks, avail 2. Okay, not that exciting. But if you enter that, you may pay 8 mana, 2 blue and 2 black included in that, exile 8 cards from your graveyard, and you flip her over. She becomes a Time Walk. When this creature transforms into ultimate unpleasant, take an extra turn off this one. Now, if you could flicker her and pay again, you could take a lot of different turns. Of course, having 8 cards in your bin will run out eventually because it's hard to get your bin that well stocked. Fine. Seeing an uncommon have a take an extra turn effect on it is super interesting. I don't think it's very good though. It's not very splashy. Well, it's splashy. Not very good. Or that exciting. Can something be splashy and unexciting? I think so. Vivi Ornithia is a 3 mana 0/3 in red-blue. It's a mythic. 0 mana at X mana of any combination of blue and red, where X is Vivi Ornithia's power. Activate only during a turn, only once each turn. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, put a +1/+1 counter on Vivi Ornithia and deals 1 damage to each opponent. Okay. What the fuck is this? So it has that super prowess again, the permanent prowess when we get to the counters. Those counters then also ping opponents as you cast non-creature spells. Not just instants and sorceries, by the way. Planeswalkers, enchantments, and artifacts also do this. There's all different build paths as a commander or as a constructed 60-card deck. And then for 0, you get to make a load of fucking mana. Only once on each turn. Only during your turn and only once each turn, importantly. But still, you play a couple of spells, you play a couple of fucking baubles, but do counters on this, activate, get 2 more mana. This is a combo, this is a storm, this is a pinger, this is a big combat threat. And it gets a big butt too. This card is good. This is probably one of the strongest commanders I've seen from the entire set so far. Vivi is fucking bonkers. And then another bonkers one. The mythics are really good in this set. Yuna, Hope of Spira, is a legendary creature, human cleric, 3/5 for 5 mana. During your turn, Yuna and enchantment creatures you control have trample, lifelink, and ward 2. Trample, so evasion, lifelink for stabilization, and ward 2 to be an absolute cunt. At the beginning of your end step, return up to 1 target enchantment for card from your graveyard to the battlefield with a finality counter on it. Oh, it's got recursion too. The first line of text on a 3/5 for 5 would have been pretty reasonable for a rare, I guess. Maybe a bit of extra text for like draw a card once each turn. This thing reanimates enchantments from your bin in green white, in the Enchantress colors as well, and it buffs your enchantment creatures, which includes your Guardian Forces. Yuna is strong. I don't think she's as strong as Vivi, but she's very strong. And that concludes all of the cards I picked out. That's right, I've read like fucking, I don't know, 70 cards, and they've all got a lot of text in them because this is Magic in the Year of Our Lord 2025. If you enjoyed the video, comment down below. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know, because these things take a lot of effort to put together. Hell, I'm editing like less fancy shit into this just because of how long the video is. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all soon. Ta-ta for now.